Good afternoon. This is one of the most outstanding conversations I ever had. I'm not sure you'll have many opportunities to see such a person, let alone hear what he has to say, because normally that's a kind of secret thing. But Carmi Gillon, as head of the Shin, the Israeli equivalent to the FBI, has obviously done far more active stuff that has to do with the subjects of this event, both in cyber, both in identity-related activities, etc. And I'm very excited to hear his opinions and perhaps try to get out of him a little bit, if I can, some of the juicy stuff that happened there. Just be advised that everyone present here had been pre-qualified to be here. But just in case we have been infiltrated with any unwanted people, we'll keep disclosure to a level. But after my questions to Carmi, you would also have the opportunity to pose your own questions. Please be gentle. So, Carmi, good afternoon. Can you please give us a little bit more background about what you have been doing, where your expertise are?
First, good afternoon to everyone. I really appreciate that I almost reached the number of participants that Snowden had this morning. What I can say about myself is that I spent half of my life in the Israeli Security Service, and I was nominated as the head of the Israeli Shin Bet by late Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. I served under him, and then I worked with Shimon Peres. Both were prime ministers who tried to reach peace in the Middle East, and at the same time combat terrorism, especially the fundamental Muslim groups, terror like Hezbollah and Hamas, during the 90s. And as a head of Shin Bet, I was kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because on one hand I was their advisor in the peace process with the Palestinians as an intelligence expert of Palestinians, and so in the peace process with Jordan. And at the same time, I had to run the war against terror that was, those days, was much more known in the Middle East and now become to be a common knowledge all over the world, and especially here in the United States after 9/11.
Mm-hmm. May I very gently ask, can you name some of the more major events that took place during your administration that you were in a way involved in?
Well, my time, we had several suicide bombers in the streets of Israel, especially on buses, shopping malls, and so on. The number of casualties was horrible, but the big challenge of a terrorist, and you should know that also when we speak about cybersecurity, is not to kill as many people as possible, but to create chaos. And in my time, when I was with more hair on my head, that was the way, suicide bombers, that the number of casualties was so high that people didn't even go on a bus, because they were afraid of it. If you take 9/11, And those planes that get into the Twins and Pentagon nearby and so on. Again, it's not only the matter of the casualties, it's much, much more beyond it. Think about yourself. You take a flight to get to Washington, D.C. You need to be at the airport 2 hours ahead, go through security check, give up your privatization, and let the security man check into your bag and see your intimate items. And it's really changed the life all over the world of everyone who go into airport. And this is the message of a terrorist: to change the quality of life, to destroy the quality of life in democracy. So going back to my time, the checks and balance between trying to reach an agreement, any kind of agreement with a terrorist to stop their acts, and at the same time, if it's necessary, to kill them, or as we see that even president like Obama, who promised to close Guantanamo, led by himself the assassination of bin Laden. And Obama was kind of president that spoke all the time about deeds of peace. He went to the Middle East and tried to reach a different solution. And so in this little laboratory named Israel, we had this before, and I played an important role in this process.
Carmi, when I think about Shin Bet and secret services, I see a picture of people with, how do you call those hats? Borsellino hats or Macintosh raincoats and that sort of thing. Now, this conference is about identity and about cyber and about everything that goes around this. How big an issue, how big a thing is identity in the work of a secret service like the Shin Bet?
Well, it's the most important thing. When you speak about the current acts that is done by FBI, by Ministry of Home Security, by every organization, MI5, MI6, whatever, since we don't see a threat, or we see here and there a threat like North Korea, but mainly it becomes to be an individual threat on systems, even if it's by using cyber methods. It's done by one hacker, or maybe 100 hackers, or it's done by one terrorist or a group of 3, 4 terrorists. So you after names, you after best way to identify and to define between enemy and friend, when the vast majority are friends. Mm-hmm. For that, identity is the most important thing. And you can see it in all the measures that are used now, even in the US immigration and immigrations all over the world. It's not enough to have a passport anymore. So, and this also concerns financial business, like banks. I don't even know where is the branch, the nearest branch of my bank, because I use my cell phone to do all my every act in my bank account is done through the internet. Through how do they identify me? how do they know that it's not somebody else? So,
Carmi, having worked in this field for quite some years, I can see more and more and more regulations. At the same token, I see more and more and more fraud. How come it's so easy?
well, speaking about regulation is a new thing. We need to notice that cyber threats become more and more actual. And even here in the United States, that is known as very much, they know how to prepare themselves. Let's take a small story that become the reason for regulation here in the States. I believe that you are old enough to remember the cyber attack on Sony Pictures. Well, it came after the attack on Target. It was not the first attack, but that was the best known attack. And why is that? Because Sony Pictures is entertainment. It's not a bank, it's not money, it's nothing there. But this attack was done by a country named North Korea. And what was the immediate response of President Obama? He disconnected North Korea from the internet. What was the response of North Korea? We are going to disconnect you. Think about yourself without internet. And then the fire went down. And think about it, we are speaking about two nuclear countries that nowadays there is a crisis between these two superpowers. And because of what? Because of Sony Pictures. So, and only after that, and I remember I was invited, in Israel we had a regulation for cybersecurity from year 2014, and I was invited by the Federal Bank to New York to give them advice about the regulation in Israel. So regulation here in the States and in European countries is very new. I know in Germany it's not affected yet. It's only going to be only in 2018. So because cyber suddenly become to be the biggest threat if you speak about crimes, if you speak about terror, if you speak about anything. See what happened in Europe only last weekend in Europe and other 155 countries, including the States.
Let me ask a little bit more about this cyber thing. When many people think about cyber attacks, they think about some young dude in a hoodie, sitting in a dark room with a pile of pizzas, and basically all he has to do is find some password somewhere.
Which TV series you watch? Yeah.
So all he has to do is just find some password, and that's basically it. You're in.
Very easy.
How much is the identity thing or identity fraud or identity impersonation has to do with this at all, with cyber?
It has to do a lot because at the end of the day, you attack, even the government of the United States was just attacked by this ransomware attack in the last weekend. But the best or the easiest way to get into the system is through a personal PC. And again, if you use your code is 1, 2, 3, 4, you make the life easier. But it doesn't mean so. You need to have something which will be more sophisticated. Now look at it as, you remember, you don't remember, but there were days in Chicago of the mafia, They rob the bank every second day, get into the bank very brutal way, took the safe, put it on a car, and disappeared for $40,000, $50,000. Now they can do it for millions, and not even to move from your chair. Mm-hmm. But it's much more beyond it. It's and this is what the ransomware tried to do. It's to do this ransom based on your intimate and personal information. About a year ago, my company, we sent an intelligence report all over the world that the easiest information you can get nowadays, after the banks already better protected, are the healthcare system. And why is that? Because your personal information is your MD, medical doctor in his clinic and in hospital and wherever. This worth money. And it's so easy to get into it so that you can stop 16 hospitals in the United Kingdom, and just imagine what a catastrophe it can be. And it's like that because no one thinks that information and money was the same thing. The assets of every organization in many times is the information. If you stop the system, or if you get into personal information, you can become very rich, and it's easy to do that. You can sit in your room in Ukraine, in Iran, in China, wherever, or Israel, mm-hmm. and just be a sophisticated thief. So like physical protection, we are going to see that the policemen or the cybersecurity people will also be behind the attackers and will need to run after them.
Risking being shipped back home in a crate, I have to ask the following question. We usually look at the terrorists, etc., as the ones using identity and identity fraud, penetrating, causing whatever they cause. Aren't secret services also using identities as part of their war against?
Well, this kind of question, if I'll give you an answer, then I'll need to kill you after that. Yes. Of course. This is a spy story. The spies don't look like the old spy, you know, with the heavy coat and the hat and this. It's over. Now they wear glasses and look like a nice professor in a state university somewhere. Because the world is different. But of course, you use other identities, passports and so on. So, but the life of the spies, as the life of the terrorists, are much harder now, but we'll find solution.
You don't want to give more details?
Well, you know, Snowden already gave all the information that is needed, so okay. I don't want to repeat.
Okay, I'm keeping it at this. A question that, or two questions that touch a little bit the subject that we know is very much talked about here, which is the issue of privacy, etc., but not from the theoretical point of view. One of them is this. As part of our work, we looked at the possibility of collecting compromised personal data from dark web, and as part of the screening that we're doing, to flag those people as this person's data is out there. We found out that if we do that, every second person here will probably be flagged because your data is already there. And I mean not just your name, including your bank, etc., bank account, personal data, etc. On the other hand, only recently did I read some warnings from professionals saying that the loophole is not necessarily what's in dark web, but the ease of getting your data from social media. Where's the big threat hiding of people's identity? Where is it coming from?
I'm sorry, I didn't, the punchline, if you can.
Okay. Is the data available on dark web the place that's the most threatening on the compromise of people's identity? Or is it the data they provide voluntarily via their profiles on social media?
Well, first, dark web and the web are almost the same because everyone can reach the dark web. I can tell you that, and it's also legal. My company used the dark web to give intelligence information to our customers. And also don't forget that when it comes to governmental institutions, and also it's in the interest of governments to protect private sectors as well, they have information that it's used only by the government, not by others. The big question mark is how to take all this ocean of information and make it as a tool that can be used can be analyzed and become an intelligence that can be used as an information that can stop the next, let's say, the next ransomware that for sure is going to come. This is something that is not exist as far as I know. My company, we have a patent that is designated here in the patent authority in the States, but we still develop it. We have only the idea. The day we'll have it, of course, it's going to be changed the whole world. But for the time being, the ability to stop an attack before the time, it's almost impossible. But if you take the last attack,
Yesterday,
it was stopped sometime few minutes after, because every professional can change the code and do what is needed to open the system again, and that's exactly what happened. The thief got only $33,000 out of this huge attack with all this public relation, but who made money? Cybersecurity companies, because they were needed, to change the code and open the system. Mm-hmm. So it was maybe, as someone who deals with cybersecurity, I should thank this ransom attack, because it really gave us a lot of work and good publicity.
Good PR for
good
cyber.
PR, yeah. We don't need to do marketing and to come to conference in the States because.
Okay. Another question about the issue of privacy. I mean, it's not a question, does it exist, etc., but it's a question as a Secret Service person, where do you draw the line in terms of privacy? I mean, is everything open just to win, or is there some line?
Well, this is a very interesting and important question. It was discussed this morning with Mr. Snowden and also in other cases. it's a matter of, not of the law, it's a matter of legitimation. Think what would happen if in the 10th of September, President Bush would decide, a day before 9/11, would decide to put all these machines and to make this security check as we have now, that we need to take off the shoes, even when we try to get into this hole. It won't work. The people won't agree with that. The day after 9/11, after the catastrophe, which means after the horses were out of the stove, then the citizens give the legitimation for such methods. When you speak about what came after that, methods of interrogations, many moral questions, many where is the line of freedom of speech, and many civil rights questions rose right after that. But it was denied. Why? Because people gave legitimation that they understand that there is kind of formula for democracy, that democracy is not descriptions for committing suicide. People, before everything else, want to feel safe. We in Israel, I suffered very much from the General Attorney of Israel, from the Supreme Court of Israel as head of Shin Bet, because methods of interrogation that were used by the Shin Bet only in cases that we knew about ticking bomb and we wanted to get the information from the terrorist or the supporter of a terrorist. I had to run 50, 60 times a year to the Israeli Supreme Court to defend the methods of interrogations in Israel. Only in cases of ticking bomb, which mean maybe 10, 20 a year. And it's always, you need to find the right balance. You need to be very careful by using that. And see, Obama promised to close Guantanamo in 2008, and now you have a new president and Guantanamo is still there. Because he came from the other side, the side of civil rights, the human right of those who are in Guantanamo. But when he turned to be the one who is in charge of security of the Americans, he was balanced. This is the balance that also exists when we speak about cybersecurity, which I already described as the new methods of crimes or terror. So you need in this, as you have in every democratic country, this is a continuous discussion. When time of peace comes, then you see that the number of those who said, you need to stop this civil right, it's changed. The day after a terror attack, we are back. I must tell you that when I was head of Shin Bet, I had to make decisions that were not easy. It's different. I was an officer and a soldier. I participated in 2 wars in Israel. It's different than sitting in your nice room, nice chair, and make decision if you are going to assassinate a famous terrorist. It's not easy. You are not happy. It's not an easy, it's not a happy decision. And if you are a man who is after brutality, you shouldn't be head of Shin Bet or head of FBI or CIA, whatever. You need to be a very calm person and to come to your president or prime minister in the Israeli case and tell him, I think this is the best alternative. That's why I support it, not because I want to kill someone. Many times you have the feeling of revenge. In my time, we had a very famous terrorist. His nickname was the Engineer. He was the one who invented the suicide bombers. And he was personally responsible for killing 80 Israelis, children, women, men, whatever. He didn't bother. He was really cruel. And it took us 2 years to find him. When we found him, we had to make a decision, and the first priority of intelligence is to bring such men to interrogation, because he has so much information that he is useless if he's dead. This is a professional way to think about it. And if that's impossible, then you need to decide, are you going to let him continue with his terror acts, or you are going to stop him? And if you stop him, what will be the price? And there are inheritors who are waiting also. So this is a very tough decision. So if we take bin Laden, I think that the only case I ever heard of such an act that is on TV on real time was the story of bin Laden. I don't know, but I didn't hear any voice against it in the States, at least not in the media. For sure, there were some people who thought that it's not nice to do it, but people took it as granted. He should pay for what he did, but more than that, he should pay for what he's going to do in the future. So I don't think that it's an easy decision, but sometimes you need to make such a decision that is against all what you believe in. You can be the greatest supporter of civil rights, for sure human rights, but at the same time you need to make such a decision against your willingness. And when you do it, you need to think that how many lives you saved, and those innocent people who are killed in terror attacks have also the right to live and to live in security.
Gabi, it's amazing. I have so many questions, but something here is ticking.
I'm sorry that my answers are too long, and I can answer you with yes and no.
It's exciting. I
really would like you to think about this dilemma, because you are going to face it again and again and again. And you are not young enough to have many times.
I would like to open for some questions from the crowd, for the audience, to Carmi about the subject of the Secret Services, ID, and cyber. Does anyone have a question they would like to pose? Don't be afraid. There's no cost to it. Yes?
You say that we're going to have these kinds of situations over and over again, and I agree with that. And each time we get a ratcheting up in the level, and sort of where does that all end? What does it lead to?
You know how old I am? I'm 67. So I could hardly hear you. So if you can help me with that. שמעת את השאלה? Or if you can come closer, I don't know. There is no mic.
Is there a mic?
Sorry,
I was just agreeing with you that these kinds of situations are going to happen continually, and that each time they happen, we're going to get a ratcheting up of the level of, Patriot Act 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the case may be, ticking time bomb justifications, and just sort of where does it lead to, in the future? Just maybe a thought question.
אתה יכול לעזור לי בתרגום קצר? לא הקשבת.
לגבי זה שככל שיש יותר פעולות, ככה הדרישות לגבי מלחמה באיום הולכות ומסלימות.
Well, we are going to see more and more attacks. The world is in a way of chaos. I don't want to get into too much details, but we need to see the change. In the days of Soviet Union and United States, it was different. It was much more kind of civil war between two political superpowers who acted also by using small groups like terror groups all over the world, especially the Soviets. You can compromise with secular people because you are much more flexible when you have political motivations. When it comes to religions, this is something that you can't compromise. If you believe, and I'm speaking here about extremists, I don't speak about normal people. Extremists, they see their religion as something that is obstacle that you can't, it's for sure you can't compromise. And if you are a Muslim and I'm a Jew, we can speak over and over it, but at the end of the day, you have your prophet, I have my prophet, and the Christian have their prophet. And nobody is going to compromise unless he's secular. So what we see nowadays, it's a different terrorism, different world, the immigration, the fact that there are no borders anymore except here in the United States. You can pass through one country to another with no problem. What you see in Europe, everything is based on a different religion. See what happened in Turkey. I believe that we are going to face a very, very hard time in our world because I don't see how it's possible to find, to reach kind of agreement. I think that the problem of North Korea can be solved. I don't see what is the way to solve the problems that you can see nowadays in Germany, in Belgium, and other democratic countries. And why is that? Because North Korea, it's between nations. In Europe, it's between individuals. It's among people. I don't know if I answer your question, but I really wanted to say what I just said.
So internal and external defense relies upon agents being able to pretend to be other people. And for years that's been a feasible thing for them to do. Today, everybody leaves digital footprints, electronic exhaust everywhere, which can be seen and detected. In the future, how do you think it will be possible for the good guys, internal and external security agents, assuming that they are good guys, to be able to conceal their identities when going about their legitimate work?
Well, this is, I can't give you the solution because I'm sure that everywhere in the world the best engineers work on solution for that. It's, for the time being, it's probably science fiction, but it's going to be, many science fiction stories become to be a reality, and this problem is going to be solved. The biggest problem is that it's going also to be solved by the enemy, not only by the good people, as you said.
My name is Matthew Commons, CEO of Cambridge Blockchain. On sort of a topical question over the past few days, wanted to ask your opinion of whether it's the NSA or other type of security agencies stockpiling zero-day vulnerabilities, especially with dealing with Western companies' software. You saw Microsoft announcing today about their opposition to that practice, and I wanted to ask, based on your personal experience, what advice you have for policymakers in this area.
עצות למעצבי המדיניות ואיך לטפל בנושאים האלה.
It's regulations. We are going to see more and more regulations that won't leave a freedom for a private sector not to be protected. What I mean is, I know my company is acting in Germany. They made a regulation that is opposed in the parliament, so it's in discussion. But at the end of the day, there is no alternative but to make a regulation that every private company, even if it's a mid-sized, small-sized company, will need to be protected. They can, of course, choose in what methods. In Germany, for example, they are going to give, to subsidize the small and mid-sized companies, because sometimes cybersecurity can be very expensive, but it's in the interest of a country to cover or to protect themselves from. It's not only hackers. Speaking about Germany, they much more afraid of the United States than any other country in the world. Not to mention Russia, not to mention what happened here in the last election, or in France, as they said. This problem is going to be the next biggest problem for the global village. And to be active, you need regulations. Otherwise, it won't work. But you'll see that countries will become to isolate themselves more and more, and to change system, because there is no alternative. The best protection is to take the plug out of the electricity. And it's not going to happen. Our world is totally computerized, and there is no way back. What is new, that suddenly we see that this world, new world, the computerized world, is not protected at all. And you need to work not from day one, I mean 20, 25 years ago. You need to begin 25 years later. It's too late. But since it's better to do that now and not to do anything. Go to the poll and begin to vote, with in the old way. Think about it. But if you don't want Putin to decide for you who is going to be your president, so this is the one. Okay?
Any additional questions? No? Okay. Carmi, Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and very educating. Thank you.